Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to disaster recovery, business continuity, crisis management, COVID, resilience, anything that can help you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me at LinkedIn. I'm the only Alex Fullick there. I'm easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. I will also be at the BCI World Conference in November 2nd and 3rd. I will be presenting a keynote speech with Margaret Millett on raising the bar of resilience for executives. I think that's the title. I'm having a brain moment here. As you can tell, it is that time again for This Week in Business Continuity, and I'd like to welcome back James Green. James, welcome back.
Thanks, Alex. It's been a heck of a month since the last time we chatted, for sure.
Yeah, actually, you and I have been chatting a few times.
Yes, but on camera, on air, recorded for the world. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got some things to chat about today, and one of the first things that I want you to kind of talk about is some recent experiences you and colleagues and friends and family have had with Hurricane Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. So as most of your audience know, I am based in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. And 2 weeks ago, we had, I guess, a horrific time with Hurricane Ian, especially if you look at the areas that were affected in Punta Gorda and Fort Myers. And, my personal story is benign. We are totally safe. But it really got me thinking about, I know you have interviewed Dr. Sam Montano, I believe, on several times, and I'm a huge fan of her. Subscribe to her newsletter, read her book if you haven't. She talks a lot about, when it comes to disasters, income disparity. And I was reflecting on that a lot with my journey with Hurricane Ian, because we were able to build our house on high ground. We're 107 feet above sea level, which some of your audience may think that's hysterical, but for Florida, we're in the mountains here. We were able to do that financially. We were able to spend the money required to have a roof rated for the highest possible winds, to have windows rated for the highest possible winds. If we needed to evacuate, and we didn't, we're in a no evacuation zone. But a lot of times, you see these news reports, why don't people evacuate? It's an economic issue. Someone like me who works for myself, who works remote, if I have to pick up and go somewhere forever, I can. My wife can. We can pull our kids out of school. We have the financial means to pay for hotels or exorbitant gas prices, or, like I said, fortify our house. And so we were very fortunate that nothing happened to us. And we had a ton of family and friends and pets who were staying with us, who were either live in mandatory evacuation zones or were not as fortunate. But that's what I've been, thinking about a lot the last 2 weeks, is those economic disparities, and that, am I more resilient or safer because I'm smarter? No, absolutely not. I think I have been fortunate to be more successful and have access to financial means that a lot of people don't. And I really don't think that should be a determiner for if you're out of harm's way or not. So that's kind of what's been on my mind the last 2 weeks, and helping people and seeing the damage in some areas. And certainly we can talk about, why do you build right on the water? That's another discussion. But I'm just seeing a lot of people, and I think it just kind of hit home with Ian, that the financial inability to become more resilient, or the financial inability to move out of harm's way, is something that I think we in the private sector and in public-private partnerships need to be addressing more.
Yeah, I remember speaking with Dr. Montano about some of those things, and she brought up the example of Hurricane Katrina.
Yes.
Where in New Orleans, predominantly the areas that were impacted were the poor neighborhoods, the people that couldn't
Right.
leave, couldn't go anywhere. So Ian has turned out to be another example, and I know there are other examples, and it's unfortunate to have seen some of the destruction that Ian has caused in some of these communities, and will continue. The impact it will continue to have.
So I want to ask you, because I know this is a question a lot of my non-Floridian friends and family have asked me, so I'll put it to you. People who live right on the coast, any coast, who get impacted by a disaster, should they rebuild or should they not be allowed to? What are your personal thoughts?
I don't think it's an easy answer. I don't think it's a this or that type of an answer. Some people are always going to want to be near the water. As an Englishman, I love being near the water. If I was given the choice to build near water, I probably would, because that's just me. Other people like to be on the water because it's prestigious, right? Look at the big mansion they've got. You can live on the water and all the costs and the things that come with it. The prestige of being, I have waterfront on the ocean and things like that, my own private beach. And then there are people that are gathered down the waterfront that isn't really prime real estate, that have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So they end up building smaller neighborhoods, or not necessarily smaller neighborhoods, but smaller homes closer together. They're maybe not as strong as, let's say, you gave an example of your own home that can't weather some of these storms, but they're on the waterfront. They have nowhere else to go. So I don't think it's easily a this or that type of a response. I think if poor neighborhoods are near the waterfront, governments should be waking up, local or state or provincial, where I am, or even federal, should wake up and realize that, hey, the rules aren't going to be applied the same, or the response can't be the same to everybody, in a blanket situation like that. Ian comes along and proves that, that big house on the hill, fantastic, great. You're built against this, so you can pay less insurance. These people who can't build their big house on the hill, well, you're going to have to suffer. No, I don't think that's right. I think they're going to have to target responses and look at, a means so that these people have a way. I've been in Florida, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been in Florida, Georgia area along the highway.
Yeah.
And it seemed a lot of the evacuation routes seemed to be in areas where there were lots of roads already built, so that I've seen pictures, so I won't say it's easy to get on the highway, but there's a lot of connections to the highway. But some of these poorer neighborhoods are far away from these evacuation routes as well.
Yeah.
So there's no way for them to even get to that evacuation route. They're poor neighborhoods. They're not going to have cars. Some anyway, may not have cars to be able to evacuate, even if they have the means or want to do that.
Yeah, that's a real good point. What I've seen, there's not delineation between rural and suburban and urban evacuation. But to your point, or going back to Katrina, if you live in a city and you don't have a car and they tell you to evacuate, are you supposed to walk? Or, we have seen some of these storms where the evacuation just to get to the main road is hours. And that's not really feasible. I also think about, in the state of Florida, we have a state-run insurance company called Citizen Insurance, and it's supposed to be the homeowner's insurance company of last resort. So by law, if you can't get insurance at all, they have to give you insurance through Citizens, but it's become one of the biggest insurance companies in the state, which is problematic from a support and payout. And there's also no delineation, to your point, where I have a house on an inlet that I've inherited from 2 generations. versus I built a $30 million third home right on the inlet, we get coverage the same. And I think there should be some preference to, multi-generational houses, to people whose it's primary residence, maybe, I don't know, square footage. There's got to be some delineation between, like you said, this is my family home, I can't afford to fortify it or to move, versus this is my winter home that I claim as legal residence for tax purposes. I think you're going to see, coming out of my state, the amount of claims that Citizens Insurance is going to get hit with over the next few months is going to be a number that no one can possibly fathom. And I think that system's going to be forced to change, and I hope it does.
Yeah, I hope so too. I know there's going to be changes up in Canada on the East Coast, because just before Ian, they experienced Fiona.
Yeah.
And that area of Canada, the East Coast, the Maritimes, you don't get hurricanes up there.
No.
And when you do, you're getting the rain that's left from once, it would be like the remnants of Ian going through, just a rainstorm, so yes, it could be still strong rainstorm, but an actual hurricane that doesn't touch the East Coast of the US and then suddenly veers in to Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland and Labrador. No, that does not happen. So unfortunately, there was, like Ian caused in Florida, a lot of devastation there. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming out of that. I know we hear the expression, a once in a lifetime storm. Well, Fiona kind of is, at least for there, because they don't get it. Hands down, they can beat everybody in a snowstorm. And ice storms that happen out that way, nobody can touch them. I don't think, when it comes to those kind of storms. But a hurricane, no, that's something that they're having challenges with, and there's still people without power, and maybe there is in Florida too.
Absolutely. And I think as the climate continues to change, these once in a lifetime storms, these once in a generation storms, they're gonna increase in frequency and severity. Fiona is a great example of that, at where it went. Ian is a great example of, usually storms are small and strong winds, right, and fast, or rain. Ian had both. It's like, how about if we have a category 4 rain and weather, and it's moving 9 miles an hour and dumping 24 inches of rain? It's just like, let's grab every worst case scenario and throw it together in a single storm. And we're going to see more of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. That's going to be another topic, I think, for another day, the climate change and what we need to look at and what's happening. But I do want to say too, to people that are not, or were not impacted by Ian or Fiona, please go to the Red Cross and donate. Some of these communities were unbelievably devastated and they need your help. So please go to Red Cross, either in the US or Canada. In Canada, I will say that for, I think it's the entire month of October, every penny, or every dollar, I should say, that the Red Cross receives in donations, the Canadian government is going to match it. So I don't know what's happening in Florida. Maybe you have something like that happening.
Yeah, we do have, I'm looking at it right now, so something similar. There's the Florida Disaster Fund, which is attached to the state of Florida, but administered by a nonprofit. All of the money goes to supporting people who have been affected. And for Hurricane Ian, they've had some sponsors step up. So all administrative fees, all credit card fees, everything's been waived. So 100% of your donations will go to people who need. And I'm glad you brought that up, Alex, because the cameras are gonna move on. And these people affected by Fiona and Ian, it's months of support and help that they're going to need. To your point, there's still people without power in Canada. There's still people without power in Florida. And just getting to that, we have power back, is going to be a heavy lift. It's going to not be as interesting in the media. You won't see it on the news, but please when you're, considering a lot of people make their donations in November, December around the holidays, I would ask you to consider the people who've been affected by these storms, because they're still going to need our help in the next couple of months.
Yeah. So if you can do it, please donate and help everybody. Let's move to one of the reports, of course, that James sends every month. This report is had to do with treasurer support and business continuity.
Yeah, so I scour the web high and low to try to find reports that Alex hasn't heard of that are actually applicable. So this one, we just have one topic. The Association for Financial Professionals released a report, the strategic role of Treasury, the treasurer role, and the Treasury Department. And you're probably like, these guys have lost their mind. What does this have to do with This Week in Business Continuity? Well, there was actually a survey question asked of treasurers about business continuity. Do you have, as the role of treasurer in your organization, do you have a support role? Do you contribute to business continuity? In 2017, 45% of respondents said yes. This year, 82% of respondents said yes. Huge jump up. I'm thinking everyone across the board who answers that question, it's probably due to COVID, but I'd love to get your thoughts. Do you think that's kind of a spike where you're going to have these ancillary programs or functions contribute to BC and resilience and that'll go away? Or do you think that's, for a lot of organizations, you're going to have these multi-faceted teams?
Both. I think with some, because of COVID, Treasury getting involved in finance, getting involved overall because they had to fork out money and track new equipment that had to be bought, laptops and things like that. Moving, now that people are working from home, they're involved because, well, now we activated a contingency where everybody works at home. Well, now that contingency has become quote unquote permanent or normal state. So what do we do now with all these contracts for all this real estate we have? And in some organizations where they had these COVID or pandemic committees, there was somebody representative from many lines of business and multiple groups, so that all perspectives were taken, and Treasury or finance would have been one of them. So they would have gotten involved that way. In time, they may pull back and just say, well, the rest business continuity, I don't care. I update this BIA they give me or answer their question and tick box, there we go, done. And maybe some of those people that respond to this survey, that's exactly what they're doing. But I do think that COVID had a big impact on that. And there was, there was something else I was going to say. With COVID happening now is that some of these people that were involved with the committees and other groups, they're now starting to have their eyes opened about what business continuity really was. It wasn't just response. We have to prepare for the next one. Well, everyone's doing that. They're talking to sales now. Well, if we have that, can we get more contracts? Can we make more money by this now? Yeah. So I think that's also a part of why Treasury people or financial people are getting involved or becoming a little bit more knowledgeable of what business continuity is. So I think that's why that number, in whole and in part, depending on which way they were coming at it, why it basically doubled.
Yeah, I think we need someone to do a survey of all surveys, because I would love to see these trends of these non-core business continuity functions and see how these responses are in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and I think over time too, if things go the way we hope they do, that business continuity becomes more embedded, or resilience becomes more embedded, or however different teams and people like to word that. Treasury will be a part of that, and it won't be more of do you see business continuity as we're doing business continuity instead, like it's embedded in our organization. So it's not a case of looking at BC to either help or it helps us. We're all a part of it. We're all BC. So I think some of that, hopefully, opinion will change as well.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we will. So that was a quick one. That's got to be the quickest report we've ever talked about.
Just one thing.
We've come to the end of part 1 of This Week in Business Continuity with James Green. Stay tuned for part 2. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.